Hello, this is Melton Guy with another look. Going to be a little flippant at times and going to be very serious at times. But I want to talk to you about something taking place today and what I think is on a lot of people's mind. And I think we need to discuss it. And we all should put out there what we believe and what we feel and how we have come to believe what we believe. If it's just an assumption, you could be very wrong. You need to check out. Check out and find out, is your information correct? Because I'm going to tell you there's a lot out there now that we're being told is absolutely a lie. And that's all I'm going to say about that. I want you to just think about some things. As I say, at times I'm going to be a little flippant. Sometimes I'm going to be really serious. Think about this, something that Winston Churchill said long ago, of course. He said that democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the others. Now let that sink in and ask yourself, what was he talking about? And what does that mean to us in this year, 2024, year of presidential election? What does it mean to us, and how much thought have I put into it before I put my first foot inside of the voting booth? The great challenge for every American, it seems, in this election year is to decide what kind of government we want. Or maybe it's even the question, do we want a government with a semblance of democracy or not? That seems to be up in the air in many places, in the minds of some people. Years ago, someone in Congress suggested we might to rethink the real need for the United Nations. That suggestion or idea was met with a much wiser voice, in my opinion, and he said it might not be that the United Nations has kept the world out of nuclear war, but what fool would want to test it? And the same can be said, thinking of recent events, about NATO. Only a fool would suggest we abandon, threaten, or dismantle anything that might, just might, have been the barrier or that force, simply because of its existence, keeping us out of another world war, keeping another world war from occurring. What fool would want to chance something like that? We need to carefully examine the what ifs, what might be, the possibilities, what we really want, what's important to us, as much as we complain about what exists. We need to think critically and knowledgeably about the trade-offs, the gains versus the losses, the dreams versus the possibilities, the haves versus the have-nots. And you can do that from the time you get up in the morning to the time you go to bed at night. What things are important to you? Distinguishing between what if this or what if this isn't. Not too many days ago, I was complaining about the cost of groceries to a stranger, not knowing he's from a well-known country in Europe. He told me without pulling any punches that I ought to be ashamed of myself, and said that I would be if I took the effort to check out the prices of food and gasoline and et cetera, throughout the world compared to the United States. He went on to say, if you came here today to buy a steak, you can, because the stores in the U.S. have them in the cooler. And it's not like that everywhere. It's not a matter of whether you can afford it or can't afford it. Supply is absolutely essential. And what he's saying is, we live in a country, if we want a steak, or we want a burger, or if we want fish or seafood, it's there. It's not that way everywhere. We talked more, but he had made his point. It is a lie to ever express the possibility that the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. Sometimes when you start thinking along those lines, thinking in those terms, you're in danger of doing something I've heard all of my life, and you have too, I'm sure, and that is jumping out of the frying pan into the fire. I think taking that into account is some of what Winston Churchill was thinking about when he said that democracy was the worst form of government except for all the others. We need to examine what we have and what we could have or couldn't have. Are we lying our country out of existence? Now, don't scoff at that. Are we actually lying ourselves out of existence? Because that is the first step in realizing that it can indeed happen. You know, given the rhetoric that's out there now and the suggestions been made by MAGA Republicans and former president, I think of the lines in an old song that was one of my favorites by a group called Brooks and Dunn, two guys. You've heard of them. And there's a line in that song that says, "You better kiss me. You're going to miss me when I'm gone." That's why we have to think about what we have, what we want, what we might not have, and what we will have, and all of those things this November. You know, we feel growing pains all the time in our bodies and in the existence of every institution. It is a must, however, that those growing pains exist. They're much needed to grow and to prosper and be successful. And we're always, as a country, hopefully going to have those growing pains. But we need to face them with knowledge, not rhetoric, not with assumptions, but with evidence. Because there's always something out there in need of repair. And we need to be standing in a position knowledgeably, mentally, and physically to work on those things needing repair. Now, I said I was going to be a little flippant, and here I am. When cooking, you know, the ingredients are as important as the meal being prepared. In other words, if you cook with rotten apples and spoiled meat, you can't expect too much greatness to come out of that as far as a recipe. But keeping that idea, that philosophy, if you will, here are some of the ingredients being proposed by some very real phonies such as Marjorie Taylor Greene, a slave to her God, Donald Trump, Lindsey, coward of the country, Graham, Ted, please insult my wife some more, Cruz, Jim, I want to be something and I'll lie every step of the way to get there, Jordan, Mitch, I could have saved this country, but excuse me, I have no balls, McConnell, Joe, keep this under your hat, but I'm really MAGA, Manchin. Now those are characteristics they've created, not me. But anyway, here are the ingredients being proposed by these people who I feel have no concern for you or your country. The first ingredient's a big cup of dictatorship, 2 heaping tablespoons of racism, a heaping tablespoon of invitations to monsters around the world, half a quart of walls to keep our superior race pure, and several quarts of old-fashioned hatred. And of course, you can add more to taste. Now, keeping all these things in mind, what's important? I'm not suggesting what is important to you. I know what's important to me. And I'm just going to lay out an idea that you maybe want to let it just kind of twirl around in your mind for some days before the election. Are these the things we want? The things I've just mentioned? Is that the kind of nation, the kind of legacy we want to leave our grandchildren and great-grandchildren? What are the things that we have that we want to make sure our children and grandchildren and their children have? Do we want those things? Racism? Giving our country to monsters around the world for their whatever they want to do with us? Hatred? That it seems is spewing out of the mouths of politicians every day, every hour upon every hour. Is that what we want to leave as a legacy? Or do we want to sit down at the supper table, hold hands, and pray for our food, our family, and our country? A country with blemishes, but our country. Tennessee's country, Ohio's country, Alaska's country, Alabama's country, California's countries, and New York's countries. And on and on and on from sea to shining sea. And after the blessing, we begin to eat, and we laugh, and we talk about our day. What do you want? Thank you. Again, I would like to remind you that my book is out, The Offspring of Ignorance. It's on Amazon. If you will, go out and buy it. You may or may not like it, but I think it'll be interesting to you either way. Also, I want to put a word again out there for Tennessee Brando, one of the most honest men on YouTube today, and also one of the wisest, I think, good old country wisdom that transcends the country and the city and everything else. If you want to hear the truth, listen to old Tennessee. And then there's Owen Morgan, who claims he's an atheist, but as I've said on other occasions, I've heard him say more good things about Jesus than I've heard from many, many ministers, evangelists lately. But anyway, check them out. You may or may not like them, but I think they're worth checking out. And if you will, give me a thumbs up, give me a thumbs down, and again, If you have a notion, I wish you would subscribe. And thank you very much, and God bless you all.